In Unit 3, we are going to start studying proofs. And proofs are a way to formalize an argument for why something is true. Now, in order to do that, we need to first understand conditional statements. We've talked a little bit about conditional statements before, but we're going to talk about them more in depth now. So our goal today is to write and analyze conditional statements. First, let's talk about the definition of a conditional statement. A conditional statement is a logical statement that has two parts, the hypothesis and the conclusion. So, for example, this is a conditional statement. If MSU plays U of M, then MSU will win. Here's my hypothesis, and here's my conclusion. We can also write this using PQ notation, and when we do that, we write it like this. P implies Q. And I'm using the colors just because I think it's helpful to understand the hypothesis and conclusion. All right, so as we go in here, it says, note, conditional statements can be true or false. So, for example, this weekend, when Michigan State plays U of M, if Michigan State loses, this would be a false conditional statement. However, if they win, it would be a true conditional statement. And in order to prove that a conditional statement is false, we have to come up with an example where the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false. So, for example, if Michigan State beats if U of M beats Michigan State this weekend, then that would be the counterexample, the score. All right, this next example says, rewrite the conditional statement in if-then form. Decide whether each statement is true or false. If it is false, give a counterexample. So the first sentence I want you to write down is, every Sunday the Lions play football. This is a statement. However, it is not written as a conditional statement. Pause the video now and write this as a conditional statement in if-then form. This is what my conditional statement will look like. If it is Sunday, then the Lions will play football. Decide right now whether or not you think this is a true or false statement. If it is false, try and come up with a counterexample, something where the hypothesis is true, but the conclusion is false. Pause the video and do that right now. We will go ahead and talk about whether this is true or false and provide counterexamples in class tomorrow. Your next example is two angles that form a linear pair are supplementary. Write this in a conditional form right now. Once you've written in conditional form, then determine whether or not the statement is true or false. If it is false, give a counterexample. This is what I got for my conditional form. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. Again, we will talk about whether this is true or false tomorrow in class and discuss any counterexamples. We also have talked about the converse of a conditional statement. And to write the converse of a conditional statement, we exchange the hypothesis and conclusion. So if we use PQ notation here, now the conclusion comes first, and we say the conclusion implies the hypothesis. So you switch those statements. So this is just a shorter way for us to denote this. So the next example, we want to write the statement in if-then form, a conditional statement, and then also write its converse. And we want to decide whether the conditional and the converse are true. And if either one of them is false, we want to give the counterexample for that. So go ahead and try and write this as a conditional statement right now. This is what I got for the conditional statement. If measure of angle K equals 46 degrees, then angle K is acute. You need to decide right now whether that is true or false. If it is false, provide a counterexample. Also, write the converse now. The converse we get by exchanging the hypothesis and conclusion. So the converse would be, if angle K is acute, then measure of angle K is 46 degrees. Again, determine whether the statement is true or false and provide a counterexample if it is false. Go ahead and do that for the following two, and then check your answers with my answers. This is what I got for the following conditional statements and converses. Again, for each one of these, decide whether the statement is true or false, and if it is false, provide a counterexample. Remember, a counterexample is an example where the hypothesis is true, but the conclusion would be false. We will discuss these tomorrow in class.